Good evening. How are you? Good. How are you? Thank you. I'm Bernie Heller. I'm the publisher and director of sales at the Post and Courier Columbia and Free Times. I wanted to thank everybody for coming tonight to this panel on a topic that we think is fairly important. I would also want to remind everybody that if you are a ticketed individual this evening, you will be receiving an email with a link to the video. The entire event is being videoed for your review afterwards. And it would be, I would be remiss in my duties if I didn't put a shameless plug in for the great work our newsroom does and encourage everyone in this room to please subscribe to the Post and Courier Columbia. It's a great newsroom doing some incredible work. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jimmy Nesbitt, our local editor, to go through some introductions and the rules of the quorum. So, Jimmy?
Sure. I'll take care of decorum first. You guys probably had this on the way in. I'm not going to go through every one, but the gist is let's all be nice and respectful to each other and to the panelists and the moderators. Also like to ask for, if you're not a subscriber, please consider a subscription. It supports the work that we do. And with that, I will turn it over to Caleb Bizarre, who covers growth and development, and Nick Reynolds, who is one of our politics reporters.
Well, thank you all for coming. This is awesome to have such a huge turnout, have a waiting list. That's just absolutely amazing. So thank you all for your interest. Assuming how much interest this actually drew, we figure you all probably understand what the problem is. Insurance rates in this state are too damn high. It's threatening to put a lot of really cool places out of business. But over the last couple of years, as I've been watching this develop in the State House, I know that there's a number of different facets to this that don't always get a lot of headlines. Don't really capture a lot of the nuance that actually is present in this conversation. And that's why we really don't want to talk about the problem itself. We've done that a lot. We already know what the problem is. What we want to talk about is what people are actually doing to solve it and discussing whether those solutions are actually feasible to accomplish. And that's why we tried to assemble our panelists tonight with that in mind. To my left is Josh Baumgartner, who is the co-owner and chef at Transmission Arcade, just a few blocks down. Also, have to note they have a really killer brunch if you ever stop in there. It's one of my favorites in town. Right there, we have Senator Tamika Isaac Devine, former member of City Council, and pretty well versed on this issue because she's a lawyer after all. Next to her is Senator Russell Ott, who's one of our newest members of the Senate and served about a decade in the House, right? And then at the very end is Laura Hudson, who's something of a legend in the State House lobby. She's the legislative liaison for Mothers Against Drunk Driving and has worked on just about every issue related to DUI and public safety for like the last 3 decades. So we got a really great panel here for you, and we're excited to get into it.
All right, so again, thank you all for coming out. This is really exciting. Like Nick mentioned, we imagine most of y'all are pretty familiar with the issue we're here to talk about today. But just to recap, several years ago, the State General Assembly passed legislation requiring any bar or venue that sells alcohol to carry at least a $1 million liability policy. And early on, this is something that was broadly popular, and bar owners included supported this. We also know that in general, South Carolina is a sort of risky state to do business in. Last year, we ranked 30th in the nation we ranked first in the country for per capita DUI deaths, despite being ranked just 30th in the nation for per capita for DUI arrests. And we have, lax DUI laws that makes it difficult for people to face consequences for this when they are convicted of DUI. Data compiled by Mothers Against Drunk Driving in 2022 found that Richland County, where we are tonight, had a conviction rate of 18% in DUI cases. And then we also have this environment where you effectively can sort of shop around for the people with the deepest pockets when you're trying to find money coming out of a settlement for any kind of case, whether it involves liquor or DUI or not. And then, of course, all the while, this is contributing to this is what some people have blamed for why we've had several insurers pull out of the state, which is contributing to insurance rates continuing to go up. People are unable to afford their coverage. People are going out of business. And this is all while insurance companies are continuing to make record profits, which are actually outpacing, the growth in profits is outpacing the growth in claims that they're getting. So with all that being said, we're now going to go to Josh, our resident representative of the local business community. So just to start off with, Josh, can you give us an idea of what this looks like on the ground for you as a business owner?
It's rough. It has been rough. I can only attest because transmission has only existed for, it was March 2020. I think it actually, in all reality, it was October 2020 before we even opened to the public because of the pandemic. It was $7,000 then. Now it's 68,500 that we signed in November. And I would say we're probably on the better side of it. There are a lot of places that have way worse quotes and way worse luck.
Right. Sorry, go ahead.
No.
All right. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, culturally what the community of Columbia and communities across the state run the risk of losing when it becomes so difficult for these venues to be able to make it with insurance premiums going up so much?
Yeah. I mean, in all reality, you're gonna be looking at sort of a corporate entity is going to just it can be nothing but corporate places because those are the ones that can afford it. There are franchise restaurants, and I'm not knocking them, but to use examples, like Home Team has a couple restaurants at Greenville, Columbia, Charleston, obviously. Great people, cooked with them. But, they might be able to afford it a little bit better. But these businesses that are just one, those are the ones that are going to really hit it. And obviously, outside of that, it's, VFWs, stuff like that, any place that serves alcohol on premise, which does contribute to your culture in general. When you go out of town, do you guys Google where the nearest Applebee's is? Not usually. Usually, this is where my hotel is and what's around, and oh man, this place has got 5 stars, and this place got 3.5. I'm gonna go to 3.5. Nobody's looking to do that. And in a state where there is a lot of tourism generation, from what I understand, I don't have the statistic. We shouldn't feel like we're crippling our identity. And I actually think that's something that Columbia tends to struggle with, specifically Columbia, with an identity. We don't want to lose our identity as a state by crippling small business. So that's just really what we're afraid of is a corporate wasteland of places to go. When I get out of a concert at the Senate at 11 o'clock or out of New Brooklyn Tavern at 11 o'clock, I'm not looking to go to Waffle House, essentially. I'm not looking to go to IHOP. I will, but I also might, go to the gas station.
I just had a quick follow because you did mention something about multiple venues maybe being able to absorb this a little bit better. Are places with multiple locations assessed differently by insurance companies?
No, from what I can tell, the umbrella policies that are available aren't better. I can't speak for multiple restaurant owners. I think that some of the other folks here have heard quotes. This person has 3 wedding venues and 2 restaurants, and they might have an umbrella policy of $150,000 that year, but compared to one place where it's $68,000. It really just depends on so many factors of your business too, because you can get higher quotes for having pinball machines, you can get higher quotes for having live music, you can get higher quotes for having a dance floor, you can get higher quotes for having a live music venue, and there's a place in town that has all 4 of those and gets hit with that. So depending on what you want to do with your actual space, your rates can go up.
Fascinating. All right, cool.
Can you tell us about how, for your business, how big of a component these alcohol sales are that you're having to pay this premium for?
You mean like a percentage?
Right. Just how are you having to make ends meet among this sort of rate crisis?
Well, you take a pay cut. That's how you make it work. You hope to get an owner draw after you pay all the bills. So that's how you deal with it. You hopefully don't have to fire people. You hope that you don't have to raise your prices 300%, because nobody's going to show up. You just bite the bullet and hope that it works out on paper, and you just go for it. That's how we've dealt with it personally. I know plenty of peers that just don't take a paycheck right now.
And when we talk, you think about Columbia, it's not an incredibly walkable city. There's not a ton of access to public transportation. What do you think that role plays in as far as just kind of the fabric of the community, where when people walk out of Transmission or any venue represented here tonight, we know that they're going to probably have to get home by car versus, some other, whether they're driving or not.
Right. The increase of rideshare services is very evident, As a veteran of 5 Points, I worked down there for 12, 14 years before opening on Main Street. I've watched CPD deal with where the traffic flow is supposed to go and where Uber pickups are supposed to be, and I've watched a lot of people just get, dropped off, or you have your own DDs, but ultimately it's, as a bartender, if you're serving someone and you ask them how they're getting home and they tell you, I'm going to take an Uber, what are you going to have a trial right there to figure it out? But no, most people probably are taking Ubers as far as I can tell. But yes, it is not a walkable city.
Right. And I want to turn it, Laura, to you now. We mentioned just kind of the state of DUI law in the state. How difficult do you think it is for individuals to try and, get justice done when it comes to these cases after, they've gone through court proceedings?
I don't understand your question.
All right. Go back to my script here. This is my first time doing this. I don't know if you can tell. All right. So I think it's important that we represent in this conversation. We're hearing from business owners, which is really important. Nobody wants to see the people run out of business, and we're going to talk about legislation in a minute. But I think, we can't talk about this without talking about what the, personal impact is too. We can't just gloss over the fact that, there is, obviously the data shows a real DUI problem in the state. So you can talk, I guess, about what it's like being on the ground trying to, make a change about that in the state.
It's been very difficult with our General Assembly getting good law because 33 1/3 of them are attorneys. The third is whoever I'm mad at for the day. But so it's been, an uphill battle trying to get good DUI law that is serious. And that's part of, the issue here today. And I have to disagree with the premise that we have businesses going out of business. December the 10th, if anybody wants to look at the hearing that was there with the testimony of Perry Mathis, who's with DOR, he has seen no lack of people applying for licenses. He has seen it's about the same as it has been for the last 2 years. There are people who've been suspended from, not having insurance, but new restaurants are opening every day. The statistics I look at, about 80% of new restaurants go out of business in the first, year because of cash flow and, bad business practices and what have you. There's been a real effort on the part of Senator Massey and other people at the General Assembly to make some sort of correlation between the joint and several liability and high insurance rates, and that's simply not true. We had a gentleman that was the insurance agent that came, from Missouri, and he said of all the states that he's been involved in, there's no relationship between joint and several liability and insurance cost. And, if I had an empty chair right here, where is the insurance agencies? Where are they? Have they come? No. I've been to, 6 or 7 rodeos here, the last year and this year about all the insurance issues and all these things. Where have they been? And how would we ever get a guarantee from them if we made any changes that the insurance would go down?
That's right.
They have not stepped up and said, oh, yeah, that's going to happen. No. I don't know why we are looking to change something that we don't have the statistics to support. SLED came in, and they're on December the 10th. Again, y'all know how to get into the General Assembly and look up, the video. Their arrests are about the same. But what they didn't report is how many have lost their licenses because of changes, for penalties for selling to minors, for selling to underage, for selling to visually intoxicated, for being beyond hours. We're not serious in this state about controlling DUIs.
That's right.
We just have no stomach for it, and it's the penalties for the DOR, which is the Department of Revenue. They haven't been raised in the 40 years I've been down in the General Assembly. They don't suspend, they don't revoke. I mean, one of my friends in Lexington, who owns a restaurant, they came, the DOR said, well, you've got this violation, you got a ticket of selling to, beyond hours and to intoxicated people. When does your family take a vacation? Well, we take, about a 10-day vacation. Well, we'll suspend you during that time. We are not serious about punishing people who are making problems for all of us. So it impacts the whole community. And our DUI law looks like a colander. I mean, nobody gets, dinged for it. And frankly, the General Assembly and the courts have not had the masculine appendages to do anything about it. It's disgusting. And unless somebody loses someone they love, then there's no stomach for doing that. We have a constitutional, piece and section of our Constitution saying saloons are not legal in our state. If they don't have substantial or food service, which of course Josh does, but that's okay. That he does that. But so many of our bars have a pack of peanuts and a cellophane sandwich and call that food, and what they are pushing is alcohol. I mean, if you have a peanut shop and all you sell is peanuts, you sell peanuts, and that's what's happened with alcohol. So I'd have to disagree with the premise of why we're here.
I want to ask too, one of the things I hear a lot from bar owners is this idea of sort of shopping around for who has the deepest pockets because of how, the liability law exists as it is now. Is that something that you believe is being overblown? Do you think that that's,
Well, yes. Let's do a little history lesson. I'm old. I've been around a while. This is my second, third, fourth rodeo on this stuff. Before 2005, joint and several liability was for everybody. Larry Martin, who was the senator from Pickens and head of the Senate Judiciary, decided that we needed to make some changes. And they changed the law in 2005, and they only kept the pure joint and several liability on 5 of the worst cases. When a defendant's conduct is willful, wanton, reckless, or grossly negligent, so that's a pretty high standard. When a defendant's conduct is intentional. When a defendant's conduct involves a use, sale, or possession of alcohol. When a defendant's conduct involves illegal or illicit use, sale, or possession of drugs, and when the defendant is more than 50% at fault. These cases are rare. Now, we have no statistics that I've been made aware of how many of these horrible cases have been done where everybody, has had to, if they just gave one drink, that is a total lie. I've never been to anybody that was charged, for giving one drink to somebody and then somebody else gave them 8 or 9. I personally have been to 5 of the cases, and all 5 of them were egregious. I'm sitting here looking at the Longstreets, whose daughter was murdered in a DUI, and I went to the civil cases. Unbelievable bad practices. You know, Luke Rankin, bless his heart, has 3 years tried to put through a mandatory server liability and mandatory server. You have to be trained. Other states do this. He's always been able to get it through the Senate, but we can't get it through the House. Though, we just have lax laws when it comes to DUI. And every year, some fool comes in and wants to, deliver it at home, deliver it here, and deliver it there. I spend most of my time just saying, to Talley, Senator Talley, who retired, I said, is this what you want for your legacy? I said, this is the worst written piece of legislation I have ever seen in my life. It was, and he finally just gave up, because I practically jumped on his desk. He probably thought, who was that wild woman? But at any rate, this is a much bigger issue than just insurance. And I have yet to have anybody tell me, well, Ms. Hudson, if y'all go stand on your head, or you so soft on your left shoulder, then the insurance rates are coming down. No. The most practical piece I've seen has come out of the House. I think it's 3496. We talk about mitigating circumstances and making an attempt to say what percentage of alcohol versus what percentage of food should be, considered when we want them to have $1 million override. And that makes sense to me. There's some stair steps. That's the only piece of legislation I've seen that makes any sense.
And that's a really good transition, because I wanted to ask you, Josh, about how much training is required for these servers, and do you think there's room to grow there? Do you think that would, help bring rates down?
So I've been in this industry for a long time, and I've trained every 2 years with multiple restaurants with the class offered through LRADAC, and I know a lot of bar owner peers that offer this training, and we do it because it will drop your insurance rates. It's also a good knowledge. It is good to recognize these things if somebody's visibly intoxicated, especially when it comes to the dram shop law and how we are liable for recognizing visible intoxication. But the training, sure, go ahead and mandate it. A lot of times I think it's free.
That's true.
It's free to do it. Go ahead and mandate it. But I don't think, as Ms. Hudson was saying, we have no confidence that it's actually going to do anything for the insurance companies. Because like I said, the only thing that changes in those classes are some statistical number like 33% of teenagers don't vape. Something like that this year. That's what happened in 2 years. To touch base with the food part, you can't force people to eat. And I tell this to my employees that are really hungover when they come in the next day. I'm sure they just forced the alcohol down your throat, too. They held you down and poured it down, It's really hard to get people to eat, especially if you're a music venue, that's a big cultural thing that will change. Music venues, especially 1,100 like the Senate and lower, those are the ones that are going to take a huge hit, because while they may offer food and have food, a lot of times people go there strictly to see live music. They might eat after the show, but their revenue is not from food. Their revenue is barely from ticket sales and from alcohol sales. But just to touch base on the food part.
Yeah, that's all really good insight, too. And now I want to pivot to legislation, and not my proposed bill to make the Art Bar Pimento Cheeseburger mandatory for all bar patrons in America. I wish I could enact that, but as you're aware, there is a lot of pressure on lawmakers to do something. There were campaigns that were run on this, like people were primaried over this issue. If you're just looking at this from a political standpoint, we have folks like Venue Crisis sitting here in the front row who have also been really publicizing this issue, putting a lot of pressure on people. I think there's more public awareness that there is a problem now than there was previously, but as you guys understand, legislation moves at a snail's pace generally in the State House. And there's a lot of complications that are here. And that kind of brings us to the first question that I don't think a lot of people understand. And maybe this is something that Senator Isaac Devine could start with is, do you feel there actually is a standalone legislative solution to the liquor liability question here? Or are there a mix of factors? I mean, we're talking about insurance rates. We're talking about, recapture for injuries. There's so much here. And where do you even start?
First of all, thank you for coming here, and thank you for having me. No, I don't think there's a single standalone. I mean, and I think that's the problem, is that you have so many legislators and other people that think that there's a one solution that's going to fix it. And they're like, okay, do this, and it's going to bring insurance rates down. It's going to keep people in business. It's going to do that. And we focus on that one solution that people think is going to affect it, and then it doesn't affect it. So you've got to be willing to look comprehensively and be willing to learn about the issue. I mean, one of the things that I find is that you have people who are so pigeoned on one part, they're not listening. We've got the insurance study committee, Ms. Hudson talked about, and liquor liability was one thing they talked about, but they also talked about other insurance, and insurance in South Carolina is high. It's high. It's not just for liquor liability in the bars. It's all around. And so, how do we affect those things? And so I do think that we need to look at comprehensive legislation. And sometimes it's hard to get something comprehensively passed. And so you have to look at, how to take multiple bites at the apple. And so it might start with, a couple pieces that address DUIs. It might be a couple pieces that really affect, looking at multiple things as far as bar owners and restaurants. And I also wanted to say that I think we focus so much on bar owners, and I think we miss the fact that, I honestly, Josh, I probably wouldn't consider you a bar because of, I wouldn't. I consider that a restaurant.
I don't know what it is. It's something different
yes,
than everybody else.
Right, and so I think we have to look at how everybody is affected, but there are typically bar owners or bars that, if the majority is what they do is drinks, and they are cheap drinks and underage drinks, and we used to deal with that at the city all the time, their liability should be higher. Their risk is higher. And so how do you assess the risk and make sure that it's fair to everybody? And I think that's what it gets missed, because legislatively, I'm not sure that we can do that without having the insurance companies at the table and then making sure that we're holding them accountable as well.
Gotcha. Senator Ott, you have any thoughts?
I have a lot of thoughts. Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts. First and foremost, again, thanks to the Post and Courier for doing this, right? I think it's very important. Thanks to everybody for filling these seats. I'm loving watching the facial expressions, is all I can tell you. Trying to figure out where people stand. But so I'm a farmer from Calhoun County, right? Not an attorney. So this issue has certainly been very interesting for me. I'm intrigued by the terminology that we use. Dram shop, non-party. You go down the line, and it's confusing to start with. I guess at the end of the day, what I want to leave everyone with is that we have a problem. And I push back against the assertion that everything's fine. Okay? And I think that it's awful that we've got hardworking people like Josh that, are taking a risk to do what he loves to do and build a business, and people who chose to go and get drunk and drive, right? Who a lot of times we aren't even having discussions about. And it does always, it does require, I think, something comprehensively to be done. I don't disagree with that. But at the end of the day, I'm tired of the inaction. That's what I am not able to continue to stomach. I can't continue to sit back and watch the same people, Laura, who have protected the DUI laws that we have in place in South Carolina, which makes it very easy to get off of a DUI. Those same people are also protecting the liability laws the tort laws that we have, that makes it very easy for them to then go and sue the bars and restaurants. And so that in and of itself is problematic to me. So, at the end of the day, I am going to continue to fight for solutions that drive insurance costs down. I am not interested necessarily, and that is a problem. When I hear someone say that their insurance premiums in a very short period of time have gone from $6,000 a year to 68,000, if we can, again, that is a problem. Now, assign that fault to whoever you want to assign it to. Okay, I think there's plenty of fault to go around is all I'm saying. I think that there are bad bar and restaurant owners out there who then give everyone a bad name. We need to root them out. And if they are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, we need to punish them for doing that. But we don't need to apply that same type of stigma to every single bar and restaurant owner out there. So, I don't want to hog the time, Nick, but, we've got to do better. But whatever we do, we've got to have data. I agree with you. I'm not interested in just passing legislation and then it not driving those rates down, okay? And can I make an insurance company lower premiums because of a law? Probably not. But I can require them to tell me what their insurance rates are doing. And so if we don't see the type of response from whatever we end up passing, well, then we need to stay at the table and we need to continue to try to figure out what it is that will ultimately make it where these hardworking men and women who across the board, vast majority of them are doing absolutely everything they can to ensure that people are not getting behind the wheel. We've got to send a clear and strong message that if you do get behind the wheel while you're intoxicated and you get caught, that there are going to be harsh penalties that you're going to have to pay. I'm tired of opening the newspaper and seeing that someone with 4 and 5 DUIs got stopped for another DUI, or was the reason that killed somebody. So I support the work that Laura does. I always have. I think it's very important. But, I don't think that other people should have to pay the price for the lax laws that we have in place when it comes to DUI. And so I'm a co-sponsor on legislation, and just think about it, y'all. I mean, that's all I'm saying is some of the things that we do are kind of silly, right? I mean, DUI is something serious. I've got a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old that are driving now. Okay, so exactly. It scares me to death every time they leave the house, right? I mean, send up a prayer and try to make sure that they get back home from wherever they're going. So I get it. I mean, this is something personal to me. I can't imagine the families that have to go through losing a loved one because of, the bad choices and decisions that someone else makes. So I don't want to leave those people in a lurch, right? But again, it's something that, all I can tell y'all is I hope that y'all are continuing to stay engaged on the issue from whichever perspective that you're coming at it from. But at the end of the day, I'm asking you to push whoever your representative is, whoever your senator is, to do something. I think that, again, this is not going to go away. We're going to continue to see people go out of business until we do something about it. And, for those folks that are trying to protect the laws that we have on the books right now, I don't think it gets better for you. Like whenever that dam does finally break and we start making changes, I'm not looking to make it punitive upon my colleagues and friends that are in the General Assembly or my friends and colleagues and constituents that practice law. And I know a lot of good ones. And that same standard that I applied about a broad brush applies to lawyers too, right? There are a lot of great lawyers. The vast majority of attorneys out there are going about their jobs in such an unbelievably positive way, and they're trying to get justice for their clients. There are some, however, that I think go out there and they, have catchy advertisements or billboards, and they tell you, if you get a DUI, I'm going to get you off. Well, guess what? There's some people don't need to get off, first and foremost, and they are going after, quite frankly, punitive damages and actual damages that are going to enrich themselves. I don't know too many lawyers that take cases that they don't get 33% of the settlement. And so at the end of the day, they have a built-in, baked-in incentive to try and go and get as much as they can possibly get. So, I'm going to shut up now and let you ask them questions. But I do get, I just think that, what we have in place right now is bad for everyone. And so everyone has a vested interest in making some positive changes.
Do you think that's where the friction has been? I was talking to a prosecutor up in Spartanburg County during my reporting on this. I've spoken to him several times, and he's talked about some of the DUI cases where he's tried, where he says that from a technical perspective, it's harder to try some of these cases than it is to try a murder. And there have been proposals out there for years. Senator Davis has one this session. A lot of people have signed on to it. But
Is that
yeah,
tomorrow?
yeah. And where's the friction been there? Like for either of you guys, it's like it hasn't gotten a hearing. No one's taken it seriously. I just don't understand why it hasn't come up.
There's a hearing on it tomorrow. That's what we thought.
But isn't it usually the House that doesn't pass it? Is that
Pope has not put
Yeah.
in the corresponding bill in the House.
Right,
It's-
yeah.
It's Davis that has it in the Senate.
Yeah, I think
Senate 52.
I think sometimes, you'll see things pass in the Senate and then it just dies in the House. And I think Senator Ott is right. There are people who don't want to see it change. But I think that's where we all can agree that we have to have some changes. No one wants to see, someone with 5-6 DUIs get in yet another car, kill someone, and then not be held accountable. But I think that the other part of that is, and I mentioned about legislators, we get a lot of stuff, but just a little bit of time I've been there, I also find that there are a lot of legislators who don't try and understand an issue. So they're not going to ask the questions, what is this bill about? What does it do? They're just going to kind of go either with what their buddies are doing or, God forbid, what a lobbyist says, okay, this is what we want. So I do think that the public needs to be more engaged on real life issues, on why this is important, because I think we all agree that we need our state is number one in DUIs. That's a problem. That is a problem. That's a problem.
Yeah. And sorry, did you have something to add?
No, and I just would point out, y'all, that the DUI laws are jacked up, in my opinion, from a lot of different perspectives, right? And that's what I'm very excited about, hopefully getting an opportunity to work on. Number one, it's very easy to get off of them. Number two, if you get charged and convicted of a felony DUI, then you that is considered a violent crime in the state of South Carolina, and you're not eligible for parole, like other crimes are. So we again, broad expanse, let a lot of people off, but then for certain folks, and I can tell you, I've worked on some issues. I come from the country, like I said, which was something I left out earlier, but I've had some constituents that have had felony DUIs. A lot of these folks, they don't even try to fight it. They don't even want to plead not guilty because they are that guilt-ridden.
Yeah.
And so that's not to say that I'm trying to get sympathy for someone that has gone out there and committed a crime. No, I'm not, Laura. But at the end of the day, but I think that you still have to understand that we've got laws that give them no incentive of going and even rehabilitating themselves while they're serving their penalty. And then guess what? Because they're labeled as a violent criminal when they come out, for a lot of the folks that I grew up around, hunting was something that they loved and cared about and was they can't own a gun, right? So they've done that. So it's little things like that that I just think, again, we get in a rut. Certain powerful people have an incentive to keep it the way it is. Talk about judicial reform, right? Huge issue in and of itself that we gave window dressing to last year. But we've got legislators that are ultimately choosing the judges that then they're going to go and appear in front of. Talk about making it easy to get off of a DUI, right? It's cottage industry for some folks, because who's going to go and rule against, a lot of times, the person that has given them their job and that will give them their job again when it comes back up. And so, I could go on. And again, Laura, when you talk about the number of permits, that hasn't decreased. I can accept that. I haven't checked that. But that doesn't mean that good, hardworking people aren't going out of business and that other people are coming in and trying. So it's a revolving door. I can tell you, I see building after building where people are trying, but it's continuously revolving. And guess what? In some places, urban areas like Charleston, where you've got a ton of tourists coming in and they have the ability to pay a lot more for a drink, or a lot more for their meal, maybe you can skate by and have just enough of a profit margin that you can stay in business. Try that in Orangeburg. Try that in Calhoun County. Impossible, because you can't charge enough to pay the premiums that are applied across the board. And so, I'll stop there, Nick.
Oh, yeah,
But
no, that's
thank
fair. Did you have something to add there?
Yeah, that's cool.
Cool, please do.
I appreciate a lot of what you just said. Really do. The biggest thing I want to say is, in every single entity that is going to lower insurance, hopefully, as we see here, fingers crossed, with these bills coming to DUIs tomorrow, and then the tort and dram shop laws being discussed on Thursday, I think it's very important for everybody to stop pointing the finger around and point it back and say, what can we do to fix this? And it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt some feelings.
On the backs of crime victims.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're all sitting in this room not trying to defend someone who decides to get behind a wheel, but we don't have an insurance representative. It feels like we don't have faith that they're not going to say anything. I mean, if you watch any of the insurance study committees, we're not a good environment for them to even give us a good rating to even start going about it, But I think it's going to take a village. It's going to hurt, And not everybody's a bad actor, like you're saying. I worked at a late night bar that just had to change their entire business model for the last 30 years. They just had to change it because they couldn't afford the insurance. Never a single infraction. And a lot of times, we used to serve drinks till 6 a.m. We served food till 5 a.m. But a lot of people were coming there to not drink. A lot of those people were coming there just to sit down and sober up, And I just agree with a lot of what you said. It's going to take everybody looking at themselves and saying, what can I do to help fix this? And that comes from calling out your buddies that are really messing up the bar industry here or up there or wherever,
And don't forget about the employees. I mean,
yeah.
This isn't just about how much money you put in your bank account. You are employing a lot of folks that are showing up and trying to earn a living, which I'm extremely supportive of. When he goes out of business, they lose jobs. That's right. And so that's just something that we also have to continue to keep in mind. And again, there are bad actors when it comes to servers, and we have to make sure, number one, that they understand what they have to be looking out for, and there's got to be penalties for servers that don't follow those rules. But there's just so much, and again, I'm just appreciative of the opportunity to be able to talk about it with all of you.
Yeah, I want to thank y'all, the senators here, for y'all take a lot of stuff during these sessions, and y'all deal with a lot of things. So for y'all to come down here after being at work all day and taking all that, it means a lot to have y'all here and take it seriously.
I did want to get into legislation that we're talking about in a little bit, but y'all raised a bunch of points. I'm going to pull up my last question first because I think the insurance industry has talked about a lot here, and I'm curious too about your guys' whether you feel confident that you have enough information to actually make some of these decisions. Because I personally have tried to find my own information about what the insurance industry is going through. The most recent thing I actually have is based off of a 2023 report from the Department of Insurance, which claimed the insurance industry, just the liquor liability sector, has been quote extremely unprofitable every year since 2017. That insurers lose roughly $1.77 for every dollar of premium. That in their best year, they lost 91 cents per dollar, and in their worst, it was $2.60 per dollar of premiums. Do you guys feel like you have the context to base a decision off of that? I mean, is it just based off of bad actors? Are just the individual claims for huge cases that large?
I don't feel like we have enough information. So I think there is some data. I think you can question the validity of some of the data, but I also think that the data that's presented, to me, there's more questions that rise out of that, and we need to know that. You also will see that over the last 5 years, insurance profits overall have increased at staggering rates.
Yeah, you can have this we're losing money on this, but then you're making $60 billion more than NVIDIA last year.
Yeah.
Property casualty is an industry up 12% last year, as Caleb mentioned earlier.
Yeah. So I think those are the questions, and if they're at the table, you can ask those questions and say, and then how are they assessing risk? I mean, I do think that there has been a universal application to anybody who serves alcohol, but they don't all present the same risk. And I know my homeowner's insurance, if I have a new roof, if I have a security system, if I have this, then they're going to assess me differently than my neighbor. But it doesn't seem like they're doing that. So,
Again, I believe that you are going to hear information that the person giving the information to you wants you to hear. You are going to hear the picture from the insurance companies that they want you to hear. And so I don't know about the statistics, and that might be the statistics when you look at the liquor liability all by itself. But what about all of the other types of insurance policies that they're offering? When you put it all together, they are clearly doing very, very well. And so, I don't necessarily. I think the information is there. We've got to roll up our sleeves and put in the time and the effort to go and get that information and ask the hard questions. To be able to do that. What concerns me is I don't know if it's better for us to go at this issue like what you see with Senator Massey's bill, which is all-encompassing. Right. So it deals with liquor liability, but then it also deals with automobile insurance. It touches on a lot of different things. What I certainly don't want to see happen to me, and it's all important, okay? I'm not saying that, but I want to try to see, from what I've been told, is that there is not that much difference when it comes to liquor liability amongst members of the General Assembly. That's right. And the different entities that are debating it. So I don't want to lose the opportunity to try and drive insurance rates down when it comes to liquor liability because we're trying to do everything all at once. And so, but at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, I know a lot of truck drivers, right? And you can take this issue and you can go and apply the same issue to all kinds of different industries. I know, again, going back, I got guys back home that are trying to make a living with 2 and 3 trucks. They get up at 4 o'clock every morning and they are working till the sun goes down, trying to make a living for their families. And they aren't getting claims, but at the same time, their insurance is predicated off of everything else, and a few bad actors can ruin it. So I'm not saying don't take this as we don't need to deal with everything. I just don't know if I'm convinced that one comprehensive bill is the best way to approach the issue that y'all are in the room for today. And, if it means that we've got to continue to work on it for the next 5 to 6 years to get everything reformed, okay. Guess what? That's what we get elected to do. And so as constituents, don't allow people to tell you, and General Assembly is so good at that. They are so good at passing just a little something and telling you that this is going to fix it, right? And then walking away from it for another decade. And at the end of the day, didn't really change anything, didn't really do anything. And it really takes the voters, y'all. I mean, I don't think elected officials, at the end of the day, that the special interest groups matter. Yes. Is there a lot of money behind this issue? Absolutely. A lot of money is behind this issue. But until, I think voters start really getting engaged, not just the people that have a vested financial interest in it, which is who I hear from on a daily basis, but until people start saying, look, I want to be able to go hang out on a Sunday afternoon and have a couple of beers and watch the football game. And, until people start seeing businesses shutter their doors and they don't have that opportunity, then, that's what I think it's ultimately going to take for us to see some movement on it. So I would encourage you, if you care about this issue, to get in touch with the folks, right, your friends and neighbors, and tell them, I need you to make some phone calls.
And I know we are running up on time, but I wanted to talk about some of the actual proposals that have been thrown out there and what's been discussed. I mean, last year in the House, as you remember, there was a successful bill that basically just created like a sort of a separate fund to just kind of subsidize people's insurance while everyone figured everything out. But that was more or less a Band-Aid. Ultimately, it's just more money in insurers' pockets. As we all know, last year, as you mentioned, we tried attacking alcohol onto the larger tort reform bill, and that tanked the whole thing for everybody. Nothing moved there. Now we're working with a bill that has alcohol attached to it from the outset. But we do have a couple of more peace film proposals this year, and I wanted to get all of y'all's thoughts on some of those. I mean, the big one is the most recent one that we've heard discussed that's coming up on Thursday is the dram shop proposal S184, which would basically only put the burden of liability on bar owners who sell to customers who are, quote, visibly intoxicated. And I kind of just want to get your guys' thoughts on, whether you feel like, that's sufficient, for the lawyers to make an argument that only puts the burden on, one individual. I guess it's kind of a grab bag, but how do you guys feel about that proposal?
I support holding people that are accountable. Yes. And if that means that, we've read issue after or scenario after scenario where there's been multiple stops throughout the day. I believe very strongly in joint and several. I believe that if somebody is 40% at fault as determined by a jury, well, then they need to be responsible for 40% of fault. If somebody is 10% at fault, I don't think that they should be held 100% financially responsible for the verdict that is sent down by the jury. And that's what we have when it comes to alcohol in the state of South Carolina right now. What that creates is an incentive for smart lawyers to try to get certain people out of the case, whether that's through a settlement, get them out of the case and leave one entity sitting in the courtroom, and then they can go after 100% of the actual and the punitive damages under that one person. That to me is not fair. So I care very strongly about holding the people that were responsible.
Well, I would just say there are parts of Senator Massey's bill that I can support. There are parts that I can't.
I was curious to hear about that.
And that's usually kind of where we get. I mean, once it gets to committee, you'll ask questions. There might be some amendments proposed. I think again, we're going after one piece of legislation that people think is going to fix everything, and I just don't think that Senator Massey's bill is going to decrease insurance premiums. And if that's really the issue, then let's talk about the issue and how can we address that.
My thoughts on dram shop law are the visibly intoxicated is easy to spot when it's slow, but when it's noon or it's 2 o'clock on a Saturday, you don't have a door person. You got 80 people, including children, or whatever. That's the most popular thing to do now is take your kids to the brewery. That like you're putting a lot of pressure on someone who doesn't have a door staff, who is trained but is very busy. And this kind of ties into the DUI laws because, are officers required to look at someone and say they're visibly intoxicated, but to get a conviction is really hard in this state because I believe to get a conviction in DUI, you have to have a breathalyzer or blood test, or it's got to be on video.
No.
Well, I'm sorry. Just from reading the bill, the visibly intoxicated part, yes, I can recognize it, and yes, we are trained to recognize it. But is it always on the small business every single time to have to be the front line of this whole thing? I mean, someone can be visibly intoxicated, try to come into your business in a transmission. We'll use it, sure. We say no, sir. You can't come in here because as soon as you step through the door, we're $1 million liable from that get, even if we don't even serve you. So what's your option? What do you tell that person? Yeah. What would you tell that person? Go home. That's great. What happens? Go home and what?
Right.
You call 911.
How do you explain that to a deceased
So,
child's parents?
I'm sorry. I know we're not supposed to have a lot of rebuttal, but I will take this. Do you, as a business owner, want to call 911 every time? Because that raises your insurance rates every single time you do that.
You're right.
So by being a good business owner, by training our staff, stopping someone from coming into your business that is visibly intoxicated from who knows what, doesn't even have to be alcohol, doesn't matter in the dram shop law either. You know, you either have to let them go to bed on your benches outside, which looks bad for your business, or you have to call the cops. I just think there's a lot of pressure on people that have alcohol, even if you're not a bad actor.
Yeah. And I've got the big cane coming from my neck, but I also see that look in Laura's eyes. So I want to see if we can identify a middle ground here in this conversation. I mean, it seems like, there might be too much onus on small business owners, but, we also want to make sure that, victims of, get restitution from someone.
Alcohol
And so-
is a controlled substance.
Yeah. And we controlling it, girl.
Well, and so
I mean,
shoot.
shoot.
if you take that on, as
I
a
understand
controlled
that.
substance, that's what you have to do.
And that's what we have to do. But, my insurance policy only pays out $100,000 if I have a lawsuit right now. So
Yeah.
I got to have $900,000 sitting
Well,
around right now every single time.
you
if
only
there
have
were.
insurance if you've got something to protect.
That's right.
Or you have to have insurance to even sell alcohol, actually.
Well,
As it
it is a controlled substance,
Yep.
and you take that on as a bar owner. My family is in the food business,
Yeah.
and we have a bar. We have people that we have to train. That's just something we have to do.
Yeah.
Now, as far as legislation, I'm totally against Massey's bill. I don't know that I like anything in there about it, except mandatory service training.
Yeah, that's fine.
MAD will oppose any legislation that messes with the joint and several liability, because that is victim friendly. It's something that victims have to have. Can you imagine becoming, a quadriplegic from some fool, who's run into you that is drunk, and you have the rest of your life with $1 million? That is a drop in the bucket.
Right.
It is not going to cover that. I've talked with, crime victims, DUI victims. Yeah, the money is not bringing my child back, but there's some sort of justice there. And we're just, justice is what we're after.
And unfortunately for you guys, I get the last word here this evening. But I just wanted to say thank you guys all for coming. I thought this has been a really great conversation. Thank you again to all of you guys for coming out. Really important issue. It's also just great to see people just getting involved in really real issues that impact their community. Obviously, people are sticking around for a little bit afterward. Caleb and I will be around if anyone wants to chat. And if you enjoyed this, we do stuff like this every day. We really like to dive deep into issues. We try and bring you guys not just the news of what's happening, but help you understand it. And if you appreciate work like this, appreciate events like this, please subscribe. It's not that expensive. I pay less for. I think I pay as much for Netflix, and I think we do. I think we put out a good product. So, thank you again for coming out.